Hiya, just going to do a quick walkthrough on these Citroen piloted cooling systems, the ones with the cooling system that is got a water pump which is driven by a separate tensioner which is then governed by the ECU. They're not particularly complicated, but it's good to know how they work. I'm in the position where I can show you on the bench as well, because I've just had a system that's failed, and so I've got the bits here on the bench. I can walk you through how it all works, just get you familiarized with it. So what you've got is the crankshaft pulley, you've got your engine controlled tensioner, and you've got your water pump pulley there, and there's your belt. So in situ you can't see much, but there it is working. So the first thing I noticed was the customer was complaining that it had lost coolant. There was a bit of a noise coming from the engine. It had lost coolant because it had overheated. It had overheated because it had lost its drive to the water pump. The water had expanded and just blown a load of water out through the expansion tank. So first thing I noticed was that the alternator belt had fallen apart. It was in a bad way. This has a knock-on effect. The tensioner sits here, so you're relying on that belt running smoothly so that it doesn't have feedback onto this roller here. Also, you want to run the engine and see what this pulley is doing. When I ran this engine, the pulley, when it was in place, was chattering backwards and forwards. You can't physically see any damage to the pulley, but it wasn't running true. Again, that gives feedback. If it's running out of true, it gives feedback across here, and it's worn the bearing out on this pulley here, and it's set up a fault within the actual unit itself. This wheel here, that wheel there, runs on this wheel, which has got a plastic coating on it, or a rubberized coating. So this is your water pump wheel. So your crankshaft rubs against this wheel here, which spins that and drives this, which is your water pump. This arm moves in and out, and that is controlled by a 2-wire feed in the top, which is controlled by the ECU. So the ECU is measuring temperature. It's when the engine's cold, this arm extends forward and disengages the drive to the water pump. So the water pump doesn't run, the engine heats up quicker. Then the engine ECU senses the temperature getting warmer. What it does is wind this arm up. The arm engages, sits against here and here, which turns that wheel, runs the water pump. So it's very dependent on a lot of things being right. You don't want any feedback through this wobbly pulley. You don't want a knackered alternator belt, because again, that's giving you bad feedback, and the wear on the belt gives you inconsistency of drive on this pulley. And also, you don't want your water pump pulley falling apart like this. So this one's had a full gambit of faults. And so we've replaced the lot. The water pump itself seems okay, can't see any problems with that. So fairly easy to replace it all. The only thing you need to know is that this tensioner can be released here. If you look there. So when you look at it in situ, it's like this, and then that is tensioned. This wheel is then tensioned up. To release the tension, you just pull that one out, and then you pull it up. So there's a little tongue there and a little hole in the tab. So then you can hook this little plastic tab through there which holds the tension off. Once the tension's off, you can unbolt it and take it out. Once it's fitted back, you just pull this one out, let that one return and push it back into place, and then you've got your tension on there, which will be controlled by the ECU. Just as a side note, it's worthwhile checking, running your engine up to temperature. You can see here coolant temperature, and we're just reading data now off the engine to make sure it's warming up smoothly, to make sure that the coolant temperature sensor is reading correctly. We don't want a faulty sensor giving the wrong data back to the tensioner, which will then cause it to run or overrun or not run the water pump. So quite a few things to bear in mind. The way the system works could trip you up if you're not fully conversant with how it works, but on the whole, once you understand it, it's fairly simple and quite easy to maintain. So hopefully this has helped get you informed. All the best.